Hickenlooper, on those last points the governor made about what we all can do. And each of us has something we can do. This plan has created momentum unseen in Colorado water policy. Just to our west, we have momentum on the topic of water in California. But in California's case, it's momentum that's created by a crisis. In our case, what distinguishes this moment for us is that we, as one state, have really, not as some confederacy of balkanized basins, we've voluntarily recognized the importance of this resource and its challenges. And as the governor said, we intend to capitalize on this self-made momentum by taking near-term actions in the months to come. So please stay tuned. Our work, as the governor said, all our work in many ways is just beginning. So now I'm fond of saying, and the staff's tired of hearing me say, that water in the West isn't rocket science. It's more complicated and can be more volatile. But I'm going to make the comparison anyway, I guess. In 1962, President Kennedy delivered a speech you all know that ended up reverberating not just throughout a generation, but throughout history. By setting a measurable goal, he set the course of the next decade for a nation. You already know the words, and I am not going to read in a Boston accent, sure to annoy my wife and her family. But he said something along the lines, I can tell she's already annoyed. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we are willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one which we intend to win. You know the rest of the story. 7 years later, we're on the moon. How was that possible? And books have been written, movies have been made dissecting that question, but it's clear that without the vision, courage, and the will of the chief executive, it wouldn't have happened. Governor, thank you for having the vision, the courage, and the will to address water in the West. This is your plan. The governor opened by pointing to the people who made this happen. We cannot thank the Colorado Water Conservation Board, assembled at the table here, enough for their inspirational work. This is a geographically appointed board from around the state. Every major river basin is represented, and the city and county of Denver, who sees this moment and made it their own. So thank you to this board. This is your Thank you to the hardest working staff, as the governor said, in the state government, 47 employees. You see a lot of them up here punching above their weight consistently, day in and day out, living and breathing the saying of NASA's Apollo flight commander, Gene Kranz, who said, failure is not an option. So thank you. This is your plan. Thank you to our committed, very committed Basin Roundtable members and Interbasin Compact Committee. I know many members of that organization and the participants in the roundtable process are here. They've been willing to have the tough discussions that some of us may have shied away from in the past, and they deserve recognition as well. Thank you. This is your plan. I want to thank you to the people of the state of Colorado who easily could have said, that's not my issue, or water's too intractable, and to do anything about it. Coloradans set aside the old parochial arguments that were intentional, and they became intentional about setting a course of collaboration and action. They took part individually and then through their local groups from around the state, chambers of commerce, Rotary clubs, churches, schools, on and on. We've engaged a ton of people, as was alluded to earlier. Over 30,000 comments came in, and this staff responded to every single one. So you take a good look at this group that's assembled up here. Conventional wisdom says we shouldn't have this. Western slope standing next to eastern slope, what? Agriculture standing with environment? Local government standing next to state government, private businesses standing next to nonprofits. Thank you. This is your plan. This is an effort uncommon, a group uncommon, it's collaboration uncommon, on a scale uncommon. As the governor said, Colorado's water plan is not the end, but a new beginning. Implementing this plan is our next step. Everyone can and should play a part. We're ready to get to work answering our water challenges. Measurable objectives in this plan mean there's something for everyone to work on, from agriculture to conservation to funding to storage to environment to land use to innovation. And so with that, I'm done, and we are happy to take some questions. Mary Ann.
Governor, you've said to everyone, to the legislature, you come up with bills, to the ag community, do this. What do you want to see done in this next legislative session, and what do you want to see accomplished by the end of your term?
Okay, so in terms of legislative session, I've learned, it took me 2 sessions to learn this, but better not to come up with specific requests until I've had a chance to talk to the legislative leadership. So, but there are a number of places where, well, and there's some of them are evident in the plan, of where the laws that we have been in place for a long time and really are counterproductive in terms of imagining new ways we're going to use water. Also, there are going to be issues around funding for some of the implementation, and we're going to need the legislature's help to make sure that we have the right funding in the right places.
Governor, in recent weeks, there's been a little bit more noise around trans-mountain diversions. Some folks on the western slope are afraid that the plan doesn't really, that the plan could eventually lead to more diversions. I know some folks think that might be a vocal minority at this point, but if you might address some of their concerns.
No, I think that when you do a state water plan like this, you're trying to represent and reflect the values and the self-interests of all the different players. And one of the benefits of creating a water plan and using this process is that pretty much everyone's walked a goodly distance in the shoes of the others. In other words, I think people recognize that even as we do conservation, that there's going to be pressure on the water districts along the Front Range. That being said, I think what comes through loud and clear again and again in that water plan is that there ought to be ways that we can get to those, to make sure that we have sufficient water to satisfy the growth along the Front Range without diverting water across the mountains. Again, we are a country of law, and those laws are in place. There's nothing in here that is trying to take someone's private property or saying they can't do this or can't do that. But what we are trying to do is create a system where, that is the last possible use. And in most cases, I think if we're successful in going through this water plan, will not be necessary. We've addressed storage, we've addressed conservation. You go down the list of all the approaches here. Our goal from the very beginning was to try and make sure that where the water is, the water stays, but within the realm of the legal system that we operated.
A question for Director Eklund. Can you put the conservation goals into terms? How is that going to affect, if those conservation goals are met, how is that going to affect the water use of a typical Colorado family today?
So the question was a good one, which is how does this conservation measurable objective that's in the plan, how does that affect a family, an average-sized family today? And I can tell you, just as the governor was having the conversation with Teddy about the showers, we have the same conversation in our household about watering the lawn and the like, partly because the grandparents are from the western slope, and they know that if we're using water, they're going to hear about it from their grandparents. We have really an ethic of conservation that we're trying to pursue here. This isn't a mandate, but it does give really a path forward for municipal water providers and their ratepayers, every person in the state can really do their part in making sure that they're conserving water in the municipal setting.
Can you tell us though, percentage-wise, say compared with what the average household is using today, if that goal of 400,000 acre feet by 2050 is met, what will that mean in terms of how much less water is the average family going to be using?
Yeah, so the question was how much less is every average household gonna use, and we haven't crunched the numbers on that yet, but the idea would be that the 400,000 acre, if you look at Denver Water and Northern and other water providers that provide water to municipal users, the last time they used this amount of water was 1970. When they had 350,000 fewer ratepayers. So we know that just the act of going and updating your fixtures and doing the things like taking shorter showers and putting in updated fixtures on your lawn, outdoor watering, that kind of thing, we know we can move the needle on this and get to the measurable objective.
George?
I'm going to go, other than us talking, why do we have? I'm Jim Lockett, I'm the CEO of Denver Water, and to your question, Denver Water has reduced our overall use by 20% over the last 10 years, despite a 10% increase in the population within our service area. It represents a per capita reduction of from over 200 gallons a day to about 165 gallons per capita per day. And we can go a lot lower without sacrificing quality of life. We can still have landscaping, we can still have trees. Through efficiency and use, we can lower that per capita use and still maintain a high urban quality of life.
How much of this, either of you can answer, how much of this plan does require legislative action versus other avenues?
So we call for almost, if you take all the actions listed in the entirety of the plan, there's like 185 to 200 individual actions. A lot of those are legislative, a lot of those are executive branch level decisions. But we know that we, in the short term, near term here, need to really address funding of water infrastructure in Colorado. We need to address conservation. We've already, Jim Lockhead from Denver Water and Denver Water Support helped put a bill on Governor Hickenlooper's desk a couple of years ago that really moves the needle on how much water is used indoors in fixtures, because it really allows only high efficiency fixtures to be sold around the state. If we did that for outdoor watering, that's probably something we could look at. So there are numerous things that we can't do in the executive branch that the legislature will need to do when you talk about funding or changes to law, and the plan tries to articulate those very clearly.
And I want just in terms of the other answer about the reduction in consumers and what they will feel. It's more people. I've tried, we do pedal the plains to get people from along the Front Range out into the Eastern Plains and see what that life looks like and actually feels like. When the first time I went down through Crowley County, which really did sell basically almost all their water, and you see how dramatically that impacted the economy in a very negative way. And you see the difference between that county and some of the counties further to the east that still have water. It is in the self-interest of everyone in the state to make sure that we don't dry up our agricultural counties. If you want to imagine what this state's going to look like in 100 years, an image where you have large swaths of the Eastern Plains that aren't producing food is, at least for many of us, intolerable and unacceptable. So I think a lot of the effort in this plan is recognizing that having a reliable, sustainable source of food close at hand is not only less expensive and more economically viable, but is also part of our long-term security as a state.
Mr. Eklund, you referenced California, and this is